вот этой беглой исторической справки, на самом деле, может быть, для поклонников каких-то гранд-развязок большое разочарование периодически, как было в случае с Тином де Вольдером. Де Вольдером, который все-таки, при всем нашем уважении, был крайне узкоспециализированным человеком все эти годы. И выиграл далеко не все. В прошлом году выиграл Ньюис, но кто скажет, что это был The Strong Man, кто скажет, что это был номер один, наверное, те немножко ошибутся, потому что... Спорить, конечно, с тем, что это великий гонщик, но дело в том, что все-таки он воспользовался ситуацией. Ну а в солнечном настроении пребывает Том Макке, как зовут его в Бельгии, Том Бoonen, любимец местных болельщиков, который наконец-то...
Tussendoor toch ook iets meegeven. Er is ook een Ronde van Vlaanderen voor vrouwen. Die gaat van start hier in Oudenaarde om 10:30. We proberen nu straks beelden te tonen van de start. En straks tegen 6 uur aan dan gaan we ook een samenvatting tonen van de vrouwen in de Ronde van Vlaanderen. Ronde van Vlaanderen voor vrouwen die toch wel een beetje onthoofd is. De topfavoriete Marianne Vos is er niet bij. Ze is ziek. Dat is jammer.
Ja, dat is inderdaad jammer, hè, maar dat opent dan weer perspectieven voor anderen uiteraard. De ene zijn dood is de ander zijn brood, zeggen ze dan ook wel eens. Hè. Dus er zijn nu weer anderen die misschien kunnen winnen.
Dat komt de spankracht dan misschien weer ten goede, want ze was formidabel bezig.
Dat is hem juist. Hè. Dat was echt, als we spreken over Boonen Cancellara, dan hadden ze daar bij de vrouwen wel een ander probleem met Vos. Die steekt er nog verder bovenuit.
Ja. Wat ik zie op de eerste rijen in een ooghoek, motor 2, dat zien de mensen thuis nu niet, maar ik heb hier kleine schermpjes voor mij. Niki Terp. Ja, maar dat moet ook een beetje pijn doen voor zo'n coureur dan. Van, je zit in de vorm van je leven en je moet mee en je weet dat de kans op slagen niet zo groot is, terwijl je anders misschien wel een kans maakt.
Ja, juist niet, denk ik. Ik denk wanneer een Terpstra kan mee zijn met een mooie groep. Hij rijdt met een trui van Omega Pharma Quickstep. Hij is een van de mannen die kan zeggen, ik mag niet. En waar andere ploegen, zoals we er net gezien hebben, van eventueel Accent of andere, die gaan gewoon doorrijden. Wie daar ook bij zit. Ook al zit daar iemand bij die zegt, ik mag niet rijden. Dirk de Mol heeft ooit op Parijs-Roubaix gewonnen op die manier.
Juist, toen Thomas...
Всеми своими неприятностями, преследовавшими его в эти годы. Ну, красный флаг с белым крестом вы тоже, соответственно, сразу узнали, хоть он и не настолько велик в дизайне формы. Но это тот человек, которого вы узнаете и без опознавательных знаков чемпиона Швейцарии. Это Фабиан Канчелларо. И, собственно, все фокусируются именно вот на этом моменте. То есть это два человека, которые выиграют с вероятностью, учитывая то, что происходит в этом году, с вероятностью процентов 80-85. Ну а какие-то еще варианты даются и всем остальным, но это как джокеры своеобразные. Естественно, отнюдь не пассажирами поехали и наши ребята, представители российской «Катюши», которые здесь очень хотели бы вывести на атакующую позицию.
Jullie drie naar de...
Nee.
Maar ik heb beelden gemaakt, ik heb er achteraf bekeken wie nou gezien.
Ja, is goed. Zijn die auto's hier alles van top, hè? Dat is toppies, hè?
Jongens, Sven van Doeselare bijvoorbeeld. We hebben daar ook Gert Doks en Baptiste Plankaart. Hier krijgen we overigens de namen met Lunte de Deen, Belletti, Bilbao, dat is een jonge Bask, Boucher, Isaichev, Graciato, Pablo Lastras, aantrekkelijke figuur, Chalingi, een marathonman, Verre. Hier in beeld, de sprinter. Velers is er ook bij, ook een sprinterstype. Schorn, dat is een Oostenrijker.
Wat een bende, zo mooi.
Zet dat.
Is dat quickstep aan het trainen al?
Ja, kun je ongeveer. Ja. Dat moet doen, hè? Dat moet wel nemen.
Wat zijn we? Hier, Sagan hier. Hostel.
Goedemiddag, dames en heren. Van harte welkom in de Ronde van Vlaanderen. De eerste van de nieuwe tijdrekening. En dat is een stap in het onbekende. Dat nieuwe parcours, hoe gaan we daarmee om? Sowieso een pigment extra in deze ronde saus. U ziet het, we zijn op 151 kilometer van de aankomst. En we hebben een kopgroep, een omvangrijke kopgroep van 15 man. En die kopgroep die heeft nog altijd een voorsprong van 5 minuten en 31 seconden. In de passage in Oudenaarde doet het peloton het niet al te snel. Maar u hebt al daarnet gezien bij de inleiding bij Karel en bij Nick Nuyes dat het tempo er al in gezeten heeft. Dat wordt zo met stroomstoten gegeven door de mannen van Boonen. Want op dit ogenblik zou ook dit verschil van 5:31 achterhaald zijn. En zou dat nu nog 4:50 zijn. Dat is wel een serieus verschil met de tijdsaanduiding die daar gegeven wordt. Het moet nog allemaal beginnen, al hebben al wel een paar stroken achter de rug die er mochten zijn. Bijvoorbeeld die van de Huizenpontweg, een lang stuk van 1800 meter. En dan de nog langere Doorn in Eyne in Oudenaarde. Waar gezegd. Kunnen inhalen. Oudenaarde waar we in het begin van deze week nog geweest zijn voor de aankomst van de eerste etappe in de driedaagse van de Panna-Kokzijde. En waar Sagan een hard betwiste sprint won voor Guarnieri. Die zitten allebei hier in dit peloton. We hebben dus vooraan een kopgroep van 15 en ik geef graag de namen. Dat is een Duitser. Ik heb ze niet allemaal kunnen noemen, maar het zijn in elk geval 15. We komen daar straks nog wel eens op terug, want Renaat Schotten zit al een hele poos in de koers en die heeft wat te vertellen. Renaat.
ja, in de slipstream van het peloton, waarin een aantal renners terugkeren. En dan is het toch opmerkelijk dat er nog geen enkele valpartij is geweest. Dat is eigenlijk het voornaamste wapenfeit in de start van het peloton. Houd vasthouden, er moet niemand vallen.
Ja, kijk eens.
Луку Паулини, с которым я общался прилюдно во время презентации команды в феврале месяце, и он говорил о том, что вот осталось неосуществленное... Ну, это обычно. Как пошли эти брусчатые подъемы, которые, правда, расположены в другом порядке, и вообще очень сильно перекроился в этом году маршрут, и поэтому все предполагают, что может быть очень странная такая разведка. Еще 143 километра из более чем 250. И пока мы видим здесь и Бома, мы видим здесь и Хагена, и Глинский тоже здесь отбирается. Ну и вот обратите внимание на то, и вспомните еще этот момент. Канчелара тут едва не потаранил болельщиков, но сумел таки вписаться. Дальше 20-й позиции сидеть просто недопустимо. Особенно вот в этой версии тура Фландрии. Вы его во многом не узнаете. Нет Мура, нет для многих символа этой гонки. И у некоторых просто нет слов. Например, у короля этой гонки, который выиграл в 90-х годах, великого Микеле Бартоли. Кстати говоря, весьма доступного для разнообразных форм интернет-общения и достаточно активного в социальных сетях, как это ни странно. Но вот он сказал, что, конечно, он очень сильно расстроен тем, что формат гонки меняется. Каким он будет в этот раз? Может быть, она будет и тяжелее. Он предполагает, что это вероятно, потому что все-таки последняя гора достаточно длинная и с брусчатыми участками будет находиться на расстоянии всего-навсего, километров 12 там, по-моему, да, до финиша остается. И достаточно крутые стенки есть на последних кругах также. И это все создает совершенно особый флер в этих соревнованиях. Ну и вот с точки зрения этого мега-эксперта, конечно же, все будет определено тем, как поедет группа. Как поедут гонщики, как они между собой, естественно, не вербально проговаривая это все, а как они автоматом решат, как ехать. Потому что этот круг может оказаться слишком тяжелым, и просто-напросто гонка может приобрести закрытый формат. То есть, в принципе, сегодня получается так, что более чем 90 лет от роду гонка рождается заново. Это не в первый раз, надо сказать. В поисках сложных маршрутов, в поисках сложных кусков организаторы прибывают постоянно, да, собственно говоря, из самого открытия. Но пока это идет артподготовка, естественно, хотя все-таки мы включаемся именно в тот момент, это обычная ситуация, когда начинается все-таки действительно настоящее серьезное испытание. То есть, когда уже пошли подъемы. До этого езда под ветрами тоже очень непростая. Тоже там есть достаточно много извилистых дорог. Но это все-таки не судьбоносные. Все-таки тур Фландрии определяется брусчатыми участками, крутыми и очень узкими подъемами. И штука в том, что вот самая главная крутизна в сочетании именно с очень-очень узкими поворотами. В итоге это может создать иной прецедент, и это может выбить из борьбы очень-очень многих сильных спортсменов. То есть фактически может перечеркнуть все выкладки предстартовые, все ставки могут сгореть синим пламенем. Таким образом, сейчас пока еще идет работа на выживание и только. Это все понятно. Отрыв сформировался достаточно давно, имеет такой массовый характер. Там уехало сначала человек 20, и это обычная ситуация тоже. Завелись прямо с самых первых метров дистанции, понеслись во весь опор. И естественно, отпускают. Естественно, мирятся со всем этим. Потому что пока гонка как таковая еще не началась. А когда она начнется и как она будет выглядеть, и где все-таки на сегодняшний день... Этого никто не знает снова. Ну и все, безусловно, все без исключения гранды находятся сейчас в основной группе. И, в принципе, очень много всяких разных вопросов. Помимо вышеназванного дуэта, который пока держится в тени очень тщательно. Смотрим, не теряем ли кого-то на хвостах. В первую очередь вот это самое главное. Потому что пока еще, естественно, из больших никто не атакует. Когда атаковать, опять же? На последнем круге, в последней горе? Или, может быть, избрать какую-то иную тактику? На просмотр приезжали, естественно, все. Естественно, все здесь катались, смотрели. Сделали для себя какие-то выводы. Ну и... Вкратце, пока это все-таки такой момент представления, в первую очередь. И, соответственно, кем богата эта гонка. В первую очередь о командах постсоветского пространства, это уже по традиции последних лет. Катюша вышла в составе Порсев, Флоренсио, Фрейре, Фантом, Исайчев, который как раз и поехал в ранний отрыв, Кристоф, Кучинский и Паулини. Состав может быть не настолько сотканный из суперзвезд, за исключением Фрейре. Но есть Паулини, который здорово чувствует брусчатку, который много работал на благо своих команд до этого на брусчатых гонках. И он знает, что к чему здесь. Ну и вы видите, что прокол здесь это вообще-то говоря, часть... Хуан Антонио Флетча, гонщик сильный для этих гонок, подходящий призового уровня. Но вы видите, что в данном случае приходится только развести руками, да только отпустишь руль. И это становится опасно, потому что обслужить сразу гонщика не получается. Он вынужден крутить, вынужден проявлять все свое техническое мастерство для того, чтобы отпрыгать на пустой совершенно трубе. К счастью, брусчатка не настолько жестокая на этом куске. Ну и, в принципе, бывали случаи, когда гранды прокалывались по несколько раз и, тем не менее, возвращались и боролись еще за самые высокие места. «136 километров остается до финиша тура Фландрии. Основной тур Фландрии начался уже более часа назад. И, в принципе, основа тура — это те участки, которые где-то идут от 80-го километра. И Госси. Проблема у Мэтью Госса, лидера Green Edge, ярко выраженного классика. победителя классичиссимы, как вы помните. В составе есть и Томас Вайткус, и Стюарт О'Грейди, и Бэйден Кук. В общем, компания достаточно серьезная. Просеялась основная группа. И далеко не со всеми это происходит ввиду каких-то технических проблем. Катюшу представил у Астаны. Асан Базаев едет под капитанским номером, можно так сказать. Можно сказать, что у него просто по алфавиту первая фамилия, но тем не менее хотелось бы, естественно, Давида Чимолай, Грациато, Хондо, Кривцов и Вигано. Ну и, соответственно, все внимание пристальное на команды, в которых едут гранд-фавориты этой гонки. Это Radio Shack. Очень обидно бельгийцам, что в этом составе нет серьезной бельгийской надежды. Но, тем не менее, они уже фактически воспринимают Канчеляру как своего. Это такой все-таки международный грант и очень-очень уважают обычно. Вот вы видите, что 15 человек едет в этой первой пачке, которая имеет 4 минуты и 31 секунду просвета. Работают достаточно четко. Ну, а здесь только выехали с бутылочных горлышек на более широкий участок. И сразу же каждый начал пытаться поменять свою позицию. Если вдруг отрезанную в хвосте на более выгодную, то, видите, Гос уже зубами держался фактически за руль, ничего не видел, кроме как того, что у него под носом, напустив глаза. Ну, к счастью, здесь был тягун, и была не очень высокая скорость. Но, тем не менее, Ликвигас получил трепку на этом отрезке. А команда BMC, естественно, тоже присутствует в очень хорошем составе, даже в слишком хорошем составе. И многие говорят не только о Бонане, его квикстепе, не только о Radio Shack Nissan, его Канчеларе, о его помощниках.
Come on! Hey, Tom! Hey, FIFA! Come on! Come on, Phil! Hey, James! Come on! Hey, Andy, come on! Come on, smoke, man!
Какой-то эпидемии дождей, ничего такого не было, но мы видим, что просто очень много проколов. Томас Фоклер, капитанского уровня гонщик, представитель Европкара. Нельзя сказать, что супермастер именно вот такого рода однодневных гонок. Так, внимание! У кого из Омега-фармы прокол сейчас был? И причем, вы видите, раз останавливается гонщик, отдает колесо, то это кто-то из ключевых. Просто мелькнул, и я не успел толком рассмотреть. Так вот, я говорю о том, что несмотря на... Может быть, из-за того, что слишком сухо, но какая-то колоссальная эпидемия проколов. Такие случаи были и на Париж-Рубе, допустим, и на туре Фландрии. В меньшей степени, менее часто, но бывало тоже. Ну и вы видите, вот эти вот картинки как раз лишний раз напоминают вам о том, что все-таки Как это ни странно, пока характер Париж-Рубе имеет гонка, потому что брусчатые участки и проколы на брусчатых участках имеют ключевое значение. Но могучий, крепкий, мощный, высокий Владимир Исаичев обрабатывает такие неровности четко, умело. Присутствие даже Юскотели Ускади, конечно, в этом отрыве это нечто. Но опять же, команда все-таки должна...
Fiandre. Cancellara. Gilbert. Mazaya. Sahab. Daar is van Quickstep-bal.
Was dat Maas zeker, hè?
Ja.
Ja, tot een klein beetje wel naar Boonen.
Schwarzman en Corinne. Sloveen. Hoe is dat dan?
Komt het op, ja.
Учинский вышел. Ну и вы видите, что пока тактически не очень хорошо устраивает Катюшу то, что происходит. Поэтому Исаичев особенно вперед не лезет и просто обеспечивает присутствие на случай, если пригодится присутствие команды в первой группе. Ну, логотипы повозить это тоже важно, конечно. Ну и потом... Когда будут догонять, когда догонят, а практически 100%, что это произойдет, то Исаичев, соответственно, посадит кого-то из ключевых фигур на сегодняшнюю гонку на колесо и сумеет им помочь. Это в идеальном случае, это в случае идеального выполнения тактического плана. Ну вот, например, Пабло Ластросу, по большому счету, что делать здесь впереди? Бороться за призовые места, казалось бы. Но все-таки он один из тех немногих испанцев, вместе с Флетчей, которому не привыкать догонять даже в совершенно разбитом и изрезанном состоянии. Вспомните его падение вместе с Хуги на Тур де Франс в прошлом году. Ну, надо сказать, что технически весьма гладенько он проходит этот кусок. Обратите внимание, опять-таки, на технику. Нужно держать либо верх руля, либо низ. Очень нежелательно держаться за тормозные ручки. А ниже и ручки переключения. Это Фантом. Кто у нас уехал-то туда? Ну вот так вот, как на ралли, пусть с менее тяжелыми последствиями для публики. Но тем не менее стоять в таких поворотах, это ой-ой-ой. Да, избежать падения в таких ситуациях — это действительно очень высокое мастерство. И вот этим как раз привлекательна в том числе гонка для многочисленных болельщиков, которых стало еще больше, и ради которых, собственно говоря, и убрали Мур де Герцберген. Потому что, дескать, в этом случае Тур Фландрии уезжает слишком далеко. И болельщики рассредоточены вдоль трассы, это не очень удобно. А вот сейчас, когда будут финишные круги, соответственно, им можно возвращаться все время, перебираться, видеть разные точки и видеть гонку несколько раз. Это вполне вероятно. Ну и, кроме того, большая такая соусная программа вокруг, и это целая неделя тура Фландрии, а не просто один день соревнований. Это действительно культовое событие для всех бельгийских спортивных болельщиков. Ну вот теперь Исайчев, вы видите, немножко перекладывается вперед. В этом отрыве, кого помимо нашего спортсмена мы отметим, в первую очередь, конечно же, еще и Талера Феррера. Тем более мы видели, что американец несколько раз довольно солидно провел смены. И кто-то может сказать, что он не на своем месте сейчас. Зачем он вылез в этот первый отрыв, имея такой звездный статус? Папашни на квадрике, знаете, конечно, точка для зрителей эксклюзивная. И пора бы билеты по 100 евро продавать за такой проезд. Но жалко, что он слишком короткий. В то же время хорошо бы и не кувыркнуться. Итак. Датчанин Лунд, бельгиец Докс, Белетти из Италии, Бильбао из Испании, Буше из Франции, Исайчев, Грациано, Ластрас, Тилинги, Феррер, Планкерт, Виллерс, Шорн и Шиллингер. Вот это та группа, которая находится сейчас впереди и которая пока везет весьма комфортное и ровное преимущество. Согласитесь, то, что мы сейчас наблюдаем в исполнении некоторых неспециалистов, достойно всяческого уважения. В основном же товарищи Бильбао по команде сыплются с хвоста, как вы видите. Оранжевая команда на этих брусчатых участках явно не котируется. Так, кого там Гармин едва не потерял в этой ситуации. Опять же, обратите внимание, что мгновенная подача колеса со стороны товарищей по команде. Никаких техничек. Технички он дожидается. Фан-марке. И даже при первом прохождении группа очень серьезно может поредеть, а уж дальше вы сами понимаете. В общей сложности 2200, если брать от подножия. Градиент, кто-то скажет, так себе 4%, но простите. Вопрос-то в покрытии, вопрос в сложности технической. Ну и вопрос в том, что это действительно очень хитрая гора, которая проходится слишком много раз. И с другой стороны есть Паттерберг. Странно, что бумаги представляют Паттерберг как горку, где максимальный градиент порядка 13%, а это и будет самый-самый последний подъем тура Фландрии. Тура, который в этом году финиширует в Oudenaarde. И надо сказать, что для болельщиков это очень удобно. И там организован специальный городок, там проводится огромное количество всяких разнообразных мероприятий. В общем, болельщики скорее будут довольны, чем нет, за исключением проверенных таких консерваторов. Но вот Паттерберг, реально, это меньше полукилометра, да, но там стена, и те, кто ездит в тур Фландрии, те, кто из этих мест, они утверждают, например, что это порядка 21 даже процента. Где прокол? В первой группе или в хвосте пелотона? За пелотоном. Кто там из мовистаровских подхватил? Камушек на колесо. Это Коноваловас, между прочим. И обратите внимание, как Игнат сразу не затяжеляет передачу, сразу ставит соотношение, которое позволяет включиться, а потом уже начнет добавлять постепенно зубцов. И вы представьте, когда группа несется в районе 50 км в час по вот этим вот невообразимым дорогам, каким образом оттуда выбираться, каким образом перекладываться, когда на узких участках технически вообще не объедешь. Очень даже может быть, что каждое такое отставание — это приговор всем амбициям, всем мечтам на этот год, по крайней мере. Огромные лотереи, и это тоже в меньшей степени для грандов, потому что их прикрывает вся команда. Подсобрались немножко на асфальтовом хорошем участке, но лишь до следующей горки. Неплохо Катюша очень контролирует сегодня голову основной группы. Присутствует по 5, не меньше 5 человек, вы видите. И под довольно четким прикрытием сейчас фрейры. Вот время только сейчас снимать наколенники. Или чулки, как их иногда называют. В самой середине группы, которая так толкается, которая... Но здесь ничего не поделаешь, здесь не выберешь просто-напросто другого участка. Так или иначе, нет тех отрезков, где может быть какое-то относительное спокойствие. Это не супермногодневка, в конце концов. И поэтому и переодевание, и перекладывание разного провианта, все это происходит в режиме большого риска. Пошел по краю Филипп Жильбер. Майка чемпион. Он, конечно, король орденских классик, но тем не менее бельгийцы очень надеются на его серьезное влияние на сценарий этой гонки. Моленберг, знаменитый Моленберг, который присутствует в этой гонке уже очень-очень много лет. Всего 300 метров, но 7% среднего градиента и брусчатка, помимо всего прочего. Мощный, накачанный, то здесь именно это является определяющим моментом. Не тактический рисунок, а именно его физические возможности. Но все же я бы полемизировал бы с американцем, потому что не все так просто в этот раз. Неприятные сюрпризы могут быть везде. Чуть-чуть подтянулась основная группа, но она так и будет подъедать постепенно пространство. Может быть, вот до первого выхода на круги. Сейчас более-менее стабилизирующая роль присутствует здесь, у этого отрыва. Пока это всех устраивает. Напоминаю расклад, что мы прервемся потом на пару часов. Потом вернемся снова. У нас есть обязательства перед другими видами спорта. И в частности заглянем в Имоло на знаменитый автомотодром Энцудино Феррari, где проходят сегодня представительнейшие гонки. Затем, примерно через часа 2, наверное, да, получается, вернемся на Тур Фландрии, когда уже гонщики будут на действительно кругах, которые решают все. Но это здорово, что у нас есть такой выход. Предварительный этот выход, потому что видно, как закладывается база того, что происходит затем. Очень плотно сидят ребята, вы знаете, даже вот далеко не везде можно наблюдать действительно такую езду. Когда такое ощущение, что все на липучках склеенные. Риторический вопрос от Игоря на Твиттере: не запрещено ли использовать технички для разгона после остановки или падения? Все по усмотрению, как говорится, тех, кто принимает решения. На самом деле, совсем без этого обойтись невозможно, и на это практически всегда закрывают глаза. Но бывают действительно уж совсем грубые нарушения, буксирование, висение на техничке или езда в течение длительных отрезков на колесе за техничкой. Это по меньшей мере не приветствуется. В зависимости от масштаба той личности, которая попала в такую ситуацию, личность может получить вместе со своей командой по голове, да еще и деньги заплатить приличные. Ну или могут сделать вид, что вообще ничего не было. Наш международный комиссар Александр Ильин насчет разных терминов, официальных и неофициальных, пишет: за Уралом, говорит, это называется нагова, да, рукава-нагова. Есть такое, действительно, полушуточное. Потому что, естественно, в велоформе все должно быть очень функционально, все должно быть очень мобильно, и все должно сниматься, надеваться по мере изменения погоды, по мере изменения климатических условий внутри этапа. Допустим, одно дело, что как вы чувствуете себя на перевале, другое дело. Ну, конечно, в любом случае лишние переодевания, они лишние, действительно. Но иногда их не избежать. Очередное падение у Рабобанка на сей раз. С лидером у Раба тоже все более-менее определено. Ну и Брам Танкинг, я бы сказал, что именно из тех...
Ja. Kom eraf, ja. Ja.
Являются развозящими для гран-лидера. Поэтому он так разочарован. В то же время вы видели тот эпизод, который случился на наших глазах. Ну, не эпизод, в принципе, а кусок лидера. И еще один завал на повороте. Кто ради шага на сей раз? Укладывается, но мгновенно встает, так раздосадованно, судя по всему, поморщился.
Hey, Kevin!
Никаких с этим проблем. Но, опять же, что значит никаких проблем? До последнего круга команда может выглядеть идеально. Команда может блистать просто-напросто. А потом, через пару лет, к сожалению, об этих фактах никто... Вот решающие две горки, и все, до свидания. Бартоли, правда, сказал, что убрать знаменитый Мургарсберген — это все равно, что... Или даже хуже, чем убрать Поджо ди Сан-Ремо с великой итальянской классики. Но это... Кто-то говорит, что это ностальгирование, не более того. И что на самом деле сегодняшняя гонка может быть по непредсказуемости, по динамике, по неправильности, в кавычках, развязки, может быть просто идеальной. Пока Канчеларо бродит в хвосте и голосует, что-то у него не совсем так. Ну, какие расклады у нас получаются? Бoonen косит все подряд. Вы это прекрасно знаете. Бельгийские полуклассики и классики вроде Гент-Вильгема покоряются ему с той же легкостью, как в более юные годы. Ну и обратите внимание, что Славик Попович рядом с Фабианом Канчеларой. Он, конечно, не мега-специалист именно этого рода гонок. Да что там присел-то? Неужели сам? Да нет. Нет, это не был Фабиан. Ну, очень общий план. В каком составе вышли, кстати говоря, Канчеларо, Бенати, Галопан, Ирисар, Сержант, Попович, Ролсон и Раст. Ну, тем временем, вы видите, поставил свою любимую силовую передачу Кучинский. И вот эту вот небольшую кучку отвез. Так. Смотрите опять, сколько проколов. Оцените, на какой передаче начинает топтать этот подъем Фабиан Канчелара. Смотрите, да, вот когда образовалась пробка, это постоянно происходит на таких узких участках или перед брусчатками, перед поворотами, то опытнейший Фабиан Канчелара поправил колесо. Колесо было сбито, может быть, при касании, при резком торможении. Слава богу, воздух-то там есть. Очень многие у нас, кстати говоря, судя по информации от твиттерян, очень многие болеют именно за Фабиана, против которого ехали весь прошлый год. И из-за этого многие считают, что гонки потеряли зрелищность, потому что вся группа ехала против Гранда из Швейцарии. Потому что он мистер Париж-Рубе, потому что он мистер Тур Фландрии, потому что он такой могучий, что однажды даже была та самая история, вы прекрасно помните, насчет электрических моторчиков. Сейчас, кстати говоря, в Швейцарии это очень популярно, надо сказать, устанавливают на маунтинбайки. Только что оттуда, собственно говоря, поэтому об этом как раз говорю. Это услуга очень популярная для тех, кто не справляется с суперкрутыми горами. Устанавливаются специальные примочки, и это помогает им, порядка 20% прироста мощности дает. Но, собственно, кто следит за велоспортом постоянно, те прекрасно знают эту всю историю про Фабиана. И, к сожалению, для развития этой истории, для подробностей дополнительных нет уже времени совсем, потому что время тура Фландрии в эфире потихоньку исчерпывает. 4 минуты от группы Фаррера до всех остальных. И Талер, пока вы видите, ну, он действительно хорошо чувствует брусчатку. Здесь есть определенные ключевые навыки, ключевые ощущения. Подестрад. Один из самых тряских участков, именно поэтому американец идет его по краю, не выруливая на середину, иначе получится, ну, совсем уж Париж-Рубе. Не уходите далеко, еще встретимся.
At about 110 kilometers to go. He had a problem with his front brake, and in fact 10 kilometers later Peter Sagan was seen off his bike and taking a new bike. They've all rejoined up in the lead.
Ja.
Словения пятая. Я с ней лился, да?
Het is een fantastische dag, Michel, op de motor.
Dat kan ik me inbeelden. Zeker weten. José was de eerste om ons daar goed een uur geleden op te attenderen. Die Choron die heeft gisteren mee voor de prijzen gereden.
Een beetje neutrale wagen gaan opzoeken.
Lastras woont, ging daarachter in Madrid in een plaats, vergeef het me, maar het klinkt mooier dan Temse. San Martín de Valdeiglesias.
Ja.
Mooi, hè?
Het is alleen een beetje een probleem als je 5 jaar bent en je moet opschrijven waar je woont. Temse gaat makkelijker.
Ja, dat is waar. Sutton volgt op 2,50, het peloton volgt op 3 minuten. Het Chalingi. Naarmate het patroon van de wedstrijd zich duidelijker ontwikkelt, naarmate die vlucht vordert, zie je dat Chalingi langere beurten doet.
Ja, maar je ziet ook die grinta op het gezicht. Hè. begint te komen stilaan. Die begint er stilaan in te geloven. Die zegt, ja, 3 minuten. Als ik maar tot op die oude Kwaremon geraak, dan voorbij die Koppenberg kom, dan ben ik al een eind weg. De rest dan moet ik uiteraard zelf doen.
Chalingi is een Fries uit Leeuwarden, maar hij is verhuisd naar Den Haag. En daar is een goede reden voor.
Een mevrouw zeker, hè?
Vriendin. Petra.
Ja, en heeft trouwens is papa geworden. Maar vooral, wat is nog belangrijk aan Chalingi?
Dat hij uit het mountainbiken komt.
Ook, en een van de weinigen
die geen vlees eet.
Voilà.
Ja, af en toe onderwerpt ik ermee aan een examen. En dat kost wel enige moeite. Nog 89 kilometer, 3 minuten. Ik zie Chavanel ook probleemloos meeglijden. En ook geen halve trap te veel geven. En Sutton die wordt weer ingerekend.
Ja, 2 ploegleiderswagens die proberen naar voren komen. De mannen van Lampre, maar vooral de mannen van Euskartel. Toch een klein beetje oppassen, zou ik zeggen. Voldoende lawaai maken is dan meestal de boodschap. Tot ze er helemaal gek van worden en dan uiteraard toch opzij gaan. Mannen van Euskartel die misschien in hun leven nog nooit hebben meegemaakt van in die kopgroep te mogen rijden. Wagen van Euskartel die er, dacht ik, de renner van Lotto Belisol achteraan tikje gaf, of niet?
Ja, dan.
Nee, niet af, hè? Die was er een wel op. De 3 left, hè?
Blijven lawaai maken tot ze uiteindelijk toch beu worden en je doorlaten. Hè.
Het is een wespennest, dames en heren.
Beter is nog dat er een renner komt zoals nu van Euskartel die de renners daarvoor gaat attent maken van jongens, ga nu opzij.
Het is een
dat die wagen erdoor kan.
Het is een krabbelmand. Het is een testosteronwereldje. Mannetjesbeesten onderheen.
Ja, ja.
Ik wil door.
Ja, je moet wel naar voren. Hè.
Aan die Capelle. In beeld. De man die de tussensprinten won. Het rusjesklassement in de driedaagse de Pannenkoekzijde. Hij voor Access Willems.
Voilà. Alsjeblieft.
Heeft moeite gekost.
on the Paterberg, Paul. We've done one climb of the old Quaremont. We have a breakaway. We had a breakaway of 15 riders throughout much of the day. The gap is down to just over a minute, and there are about 13 riders left in the group. But I'll tell you, we are watching a classic Tour of Flanders, Paul. They are charging across the heart of Flanders, and they're giving no quarter.
They are giving no quarter at all. I tell you what, I think this is going to be a much more nervous finish to the Tour of Flanders than we've ever seen before. The climbs are so much more compact. All of the big climbs still to come. Yes, we've been over the old Quaremont once, Phil, but we've got 2 more times to go. And there are 8 more of these Flandrian climbs still left to go.
Well, the field at this peloton now, as you can see, is down to about 70 riders here. Cancellara took a while to get back because he split off in the bunch on narrow roads. This is the characteristic of this race. Very narrow roads. Greg van Avermaet, the BMC rider on the American squad to our right, amongst one of the outsiders to possibly win today for Belgium. Cancellara is trying to fight his way back into the action up here. This is the traffic block on the Paterberg, and this is caused by cars. It's at a replay, in fact, Paul. That is the Sky car running up the back of the Landbau credit car, I think. Because the stop-go as riders are falling off all of the time and in fact walking on the climbs.
Well, they're all very nervous in the main field, Phil, but the team managers are also extremely nervous as well. They want to be in the order that they've been given the day before this race, because that's the best order that they can attain on a race like this. And it's extremely important on the narrow roads, because if your rider has a mechanical incident and you're in 15th or 16th position in the convoy of cars behind, it can mean anything up to a minute before you can actually get in there to help one of your riders.
Now, our camera's concentrating here. Remember, these are live pictures, concentrating at the head of the peloton. But I must tell you that Tyler Farrer, the American on Garmin Barracuda, is in the breakaway and has been all day. And Paul, you were telling me earlier, you spoke with Jonathan Vaughters. It's part of their plan.
Well, Jonathan Vaughters said the best plan that they could have would be to try and get Tyler Farrer into the early breakaway. He said if that breakaway group had been 4 or 5 riders a lot strong, that wouldn't have been a good situation for us. But with 15 men in a strong breakaway like that, he's very, very happy with the way the situation is unfolding.
So the field concentrating here now, as we are looking here at the peloton, licking their lips perhaps, as they are now about to catch up with that lead group. There's still an awful lot of racing and an awful lot of climbing still to come. This is proving to be a superb course. All the favourites still locked in the big pack. We'll take our break. And the riders are being proved exactly right. This is proving to be a terrific course, I have to say, Paul, but very much harder indeed. This is the main peloton now tackling the Koppenberg climb. The leaders are down to 11 men, and noticeably, Paul, Philippe Gilbert has got himself right to the front.
Well, a lot of riders from...
Champion of Belgium, also on Team BMC, Greg van Avermaet. They're just in the centre of the pack.
And in second position there, you can see Alessandro Ballan with the world bands around his sleeves, looking extremely strong. Fabian Cancellara just going out of shot there, looking very comfortable indeed at the front end of the main field. He doesn't even seem to have broken a sweat just yet.
Well, he has had a rough ride. Now, Tom Boonen, over the last half hour, has been seen to follow him. He's just gone underneath our camera at the moment, so he's not too far back. He hasn't climbed the Koppenberg, though, as strongly as Fabian Cancellara. And we've seen Boonen in previous Ronde van Vlaanderen, or Tour de Flanders, attack on this very climb.
Yeah, I think all the riders, Phil, this year are a little bit scared about the change in the race route, because the race, once it comes down to Oudenaarde, does 3 distinct different circuits, taking in the Old Quaremont on each occasion. And in fact, talking to Jonathan Vortersveld just before the start of the race this morning, he said a lot of riders are strange of exactly what sort of tactics to adopt, because they fear this running towards the finish. Oh, there's Cyril Chavanel just going off to the left-hand side, taking the risks to try and get himself to the front end of the main field. Riders will do almost anything to get themselves to the front end of the pack in these races.
Yes, a reaction from Green Edge. No takers there as he takes a look back at the field. And as we watch the men making their way away from the Koppenberg, I'm delighted to tell you that the women's Tour de Flanders is finished. In first place was Judith Arndt of Germany and the Australian Green Edge team. But Christian Armstrong of the USA is bang on course for a place at the Olympic Games in London. He crossed the line in second place. It was a breakaway as well. So as we're looking here at the leaders, just if we do
His Belgian teammate on the Garmin Barracuda squad, Sepp van Mark, is the unique team leader of this American squad today. He's already been a winner of a race this year early on in the season when he beat Tom Boonen to the line in the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, which finished not too far away from here.
Now the crowd wait and see who is next up the hill here, because the gap is closing down pretty quickly now. There's some of the names left in the breakaway. It was 15 riders. It's down to 11 at the last count. The rider behind is actually slipping off the back of the break, as setting the pace here is Baptiste Plankert. Now, a lot of people are speculating, is Baptiste Plankert a member of the famous Plankert family, who are from Belgium? And in fact, although he is a Belgian, Paul reliably informs me he's no relation.
No relation at all. It's a well-known name here in Belgium because of the great famed dynasty almost of the Plankart brothers, Walter, Eddie and Willie. whose son Joe went on to race, and they were exceptionally good bike riders, but of course Baptiste is no relative at all. The main field now, Phil, are starting to get extremely nervous because they realise now this is crunch time. This is the part of the race when they start to get into a repetitive ascent of all these Flandrian climbs, and around here they call them the mountains of Flanders, and for these bike riders in this race of 160 miles, they are starting to get rather tough.
So 16 climbs in all today as we switch back to the team car just before Tyler Farrer grabbed his little bag there, which has got his food for the rest of the day in it. This is the last feeding station, 63 kilometres out from the finish. The rider at the back there pulling on his bag was Manuel Belletti. The old Quaremont first time looking extremely comfortable.
Well, that was Farrer there, just sitting up in the pale blue jersey. He hasn't had a win so far to his credit this season, Phil, but he did finish second overall in the early season Tour of
A typical scene on every corner. We get somebody taking the chance to change a wheel or fall off, and they've spotted it here. All the teammates waiting for the strucken rider. It must be the team leader.
Well, this is what happens, you see, Phil. This is why on these narrow roads of the Flanders, this is a pre-assigned plan.
Kevin Hulsman's, I think.
Yeah, if somebody has a problem, one of the riders will swap a wheel with the rider who's had a mechanical problem, allowing the team leader to get back into the race a lot quicker.
In fact, it's Oscar Gatto, the rider underneath our camera right now, who had the problem. Now, he is their sprinter, and they've decided he is the man and worth the service.
Well, you can understand now why they've done that. You see how a lot of riders have been dropped behind because of that climb of the Koppenberg. And in fact, on some of these cobble climbs, the team cars are not allowed to go over. They go until the moment when your team car can get back in behind the race.
Maria Borrestraat. This is a little section of cobblestones here with no climbs. It's number 7 of 8 on the day. It's taking us through 194 kilometres covered, which is just under 120 miles. Already under the wheels in perfect racing conditions. We can tell you there's huge crowds on the actual climb of the old Quaremont. Row after row of marquees and tents and people enjoying themselves. That's one of the big draws now, that this race is going past that point 3 times.
Over the same. So there's a massive crash here at the back.
Yes, and this is nasty.
And that's Cancellara in the middle of the road.
Cancellara down there. Well, this has been a terrible race for poor Fabian Cancellara. He has had mechanical troubles throughout the day, hard chases to rejoin, and now it looks as though he has fallen. Now, as I say, these pictures are live. We may get a flashback in a moment, but for the moment, it looks as though he's possibly broken a collarbone here, Paul.
I have no idea what has happened here, Phil, but you can see two teammates up alongside him there from the Radio Shack Nissan Trek team. Cancellara is on the ground at the moment. He went down very hard indeed. That grey car is the car of the race doctor, so the race doctor will be up alongside him, but his teammates there are looking extremely concerned.
Meanwhile, further up the road, the peloton have gone through the feeding station. No, this is actually, it's caused in the feeding station. Right at the back of the peloton it's been caused. The most dangerous part of the course is when riders... and they've caught out one of the best bike riders in the world, Fabian Cancellara. And by the way they're holding him here, I suspect a broken collarbone.
Well, the doctor there in the white jacket is all over Fabian Cancellara. He is making sure that he's okay. He'll make sure he is looked after. If there is any requirement, he will be evacuated immediately to the hospital. And there are a number of very good hospitals close by the race route here this afternoon. But Cancellara is nodding his head there. I think that's an indication, Phil, that he will not be getting up to carry on with this bike race.
The rider on the left here is the New Zealand rider, Jess Sargent, number 165. They're looking down, this young new professional on the Radio Shack team. He'll be devastated to see his team captain lying there on the floor. Markel Irizar, number 164. The team's race is done here. They've all stopped behind with their captain, the most outstanding favourite for years to win the Tour de Flanders today. And he spent most of his day on the defensive, it has to be said, with bicycle problems, long chases to rejoin, and now a crash in the feed.
Well, back at the front end of the peloton, we're now on the Steenberg Dries climb, a 5.3%, maximum gradient 7%. We're looking at around about 2 minutes, the difference between the leading group of riders and the main peloton, while back down the road, poor old Fabian Cancellara, the Swiss champion, is down on the road and out of this year's Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Yes, there's no doubt that they're calling now for the stretcher, I think, for Fabian Cancellara. It's most unfortunate to crash in the feeding stage. It's, you know it, Paul, firsthand. It's such a dangerous part of the bike race.
It is a very dangerous part of the bike race because you've got a whole bunch of riders going through the feeding station, taking on board bottles and bags at the side of the road. And if somebody drops a bag or a bottle in front of you, it's very easy to hit that bottle, lose control of the machine and go straight over the top of the handlebars in an uncontrolled fall. And very often, I've always said it, Phil, the most dangerous crashes in a professional bike races are the crashes at slow speed.
Well, poor Fabian there, as you can see, there's a little bit of blood around his ear. Moments earlier, he was actually being quoted on the social network as saying, this is the most beautiful race in the world. The crowd are very, very special. It's an honour to race on the route of the Tour de Flanders in front of such enthusiastic people such as we see today. He doesn't deserve that, Fabian Cancellara, but he's been on the back heel throughout the day of racing as we come into the last 60 kilometres of the race itself. We still have, after the Steenberg Dries, we've got another 6 climbs still to come here. And preoccupied still by a breakaway, which is reduced from 15 down to 10.
Well, here we're just going over 2 sections of cobblestones pretty much pinned together. The Maria Boerstraat, 194 kilometres covered, almost 120 miles of racing. And then immediately onto the Donderij section of cobblestones, 127 miles covered. And very shortly after that, we'll have the very nasty little climb of the Kruisberg once again. And this is Gert Steegmans on the front for Omega Pharma Lotto, for Omega Pharma Quickstep, I have to say. A lot of these teams are amalgamating and changing their form during the winter transfer season this year. But looking at that long length of the main field, that would be an indicator, especially with these pale blue jerseyed riders on the front, that Tom Boonen, the other pre-race favourite, Phil, is not having a bad ride.
Well, Boonen has kept himself out of trouble and also, I have to say, largely out of sight today, and he's just made sure he's been in the right place when it matters. Always coming near the front when they start to lift the speed as they turn onto these narrow cobble climbs. The rider on the front that we just seen there, he was an ex-teammate, in fact, of, or is an ex-teammate of Tom Boonen. This is Matty Heyman, I think, who's having a tremendous ride for the Sky team, because he's starting to try and split them up again. Earlier, he did get a break of 6 away, but they came back together. Now he's trying again.
Popping across the gap in 4th position of those riders, well, up into 3rd position there with the lime green shoes. That, in fact, is George Hincapie, who, if he finishes this year's Ronde van Vlaanderen, or the Tour of Flanders, will set a new participation in the number of finishes in this great classic, going ahead, of course, of the very, very famous Belgian rider, Brik Schotter.
Well, what an honour too, and George, an American, riding on the hallowed Belgian soil here, and they'll take the record away from the great Belgian, Brik Schotter.
Well, we're just looking now at 60 kilometres to go. The 60 kilometres to go is 42.
So as we look at the peloton here, little flag up there warning the race, but the pressure is on by Europe car at the moment as they continue to try. In fact, that breakaway has slipped away under the melee at 1:48, and the reason being poor Fabian Cancellara is down on the road in the feed. And Cancellara is in all sorts of trouble here. Almost certainly now his race is over as we head towards the finish.
Ja, dat is zonder jurken, hè?
Come on, left it up.
Waarom?
Gregor is daar, jong.
Hij gaat gewoon door wat hier naar peloton en weer uit.
Allez, weg!
Kandidaat.
Kandidaat. Meneer Van Does.
Kandidaat.
Oh, wacht, hier zijn de Flanders. Zal hij vast niet bij zijn? Van Flanders 4.
Wat is ook de hoek van
Kom maar.
start to the season this year, but certainly if he could come up with the goods on a day like this, he would like to do it.
This is Tom Wieler's, who was in the breakaway being swept up, and that's the first chance we've got to see the new colours of the Argus Shimano team. They announced their change of sponsorship only yesterday, and so he's now back in the field here, the Dutchman. One by one, they are sweeping them up here. A lot of anxious faces now because we've gone over the Steenberg-Dries. The next climb comes 210 kilometres from the finish, and that 210 kilometres into the race, or the 47 from the finish, and that's the Kruisberg.
Well, BMC Racing in the red and black jerseys are being very, very attentive, trying to pick up the pace, trying to pull back that leading group of riders. It's down to 1 minute and 24 seconds their advantage, and they're all thinking about the next climb of the day, which will be looming up in front of them, and that will be the Kruisberg.
Go on, man.
The Eau de Quaremont as a leapfrog to victory. In second position in the blue, white and red jersey, the tricolor of France, is the French national champion Sylvain Chavanel, who himself is in great form after a recent victory in the 3 days of La Panne.
Yes, so we're coming into the last 57 kilometres, which is 36 miles of racing left to go now, and they've still got the 2 ascents of the Eau Quaremont as well. This peloton is really taking some pounding just now as riders try desperately to get off the front, bring this breakaway of 10 riders and then concentrate themselves. This looks as though Tommy Voigtler is putting himself on. He's also been off the bike with a flat tyre today.
Well, the Tour of Flanders, Phil, at the end of the day when you go down to the showers, the stories are stories. There are so many of them. Everybody usually has a little bit of bad luck during the Tour of Flanders, but you hope it's not going to be an accident which is too difficult to get over, like the one we've just seen happen to Fabian Cancellara, and everybody fights back into the race at some time or another. Sitting in second position there is Gert Steegmans, the teammate, of course, of Tom Boonen. A little bit further back, the rider from Garmin Barracuda in the pale blue helmet. He's Johan van Summeren, the winner previously of course, the great Paris-Roubaix Classic, and that was a bit of a shock to one or two of us 12 months ago.
It most certainly was, and I think there wasn't a dry eye in the house because he's such a popular helper as a rider, never a winner normally, and then he had his big day on Paris-Roubaix, which let me take an immediate remind you of. We'll be showing you Paris-Roubaix live next Sunday here on NBC Sports, so enjoy that. Right now this is a classic Tour of Flanders. The peloton is really very, very tenacious today. There's been a lot of problems in that peloton, but they keep fighting back and pushing the pace at the front. And it's not the favourites who are appearing in our television cameras at the moment.
Well, not yet, but it certainly will be a little later on. The inimitable style there in the green jersey of Europcar, that is Thomas Voigtler. On 2 occasions in his career, he's been a wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. I have to say that last year was his best ever performance, finishing in 4th place overall. He was oh so close to getting onto the podium. He's a very aggressive bike rider. Now, if you've got a book which indicates you the tactics that you need to adopt in a professional bike race, throw that away, and that is the way that Thomas Voigtler races. He races with his gut. He races with instinct.
He does indeed. He's never had a top 10 finish in these Belgian classic races before, but he has had a 10th place finish in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but that's a hilly classic. That's due in a couple of weeks' time and more likely to suit his style of racing. But he is one of those riders. He often says that the riders in the peloton don't like me. And the reason they don't like him is because he annoys them with attacks like this.
Well, you see him there just playing with his ear. That's because all of these riders have got race radios in. They're getting all of the information possible fed up to them from their team managers in the race cars behind. Most of the team managers, Phil, don't actually drive the car in a race like this because it's live on television. The team managers will be in the passenger seat, and of course they will be watching the same images that we're watching now.
Well, he's just playing around with his little earpiece there, which means he can talk back to the team car, but he's not going very far now. He would ideally like 1 or 2 riders to perhaps come forward and join in with him and see what they can do. The gap is coming down. 61 seconds. That was once the gap Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France back in 2003, but it's gone down to a minute now. as the peloton string out that long line of riders on another tight turn.
Well, we're about 8 kilometers, 5 miles from the next big climb of the day. That's Kreuzberg, and then after that it will be the Eau de Quaremont.
Well, it looks as though little Tommy Vogler is about to get caught here as the field sweep up behind him. So they're all together again in the peloton, and the gap is just inside a minute for the first time now. It was nearly 6. The field is lining up. So as they go, remember, you're watching the Epic Series presented by Michelob Ultra. Well, this is the town of Ronde now at 51 kilometres or 32 miles from the finish here. There's still a number of teams all throwing the weight behind, attack after attack, but there's no formal working at the front.
No, there's no organised chase in the main peloton. It's a question of nervousness, I think, on everybody's shoulders. This is what it's like racing in Belgium. You have to be very alert, very attent, because when you go around any corner, there could be some rather dangerous traffic furniture. Those guys on the left-hand side, they're going to have to ride an awful long time to get themselves back into the peloton, because that's a very high curb to have to negotiate.
As they come up one side, they're losing place in the peloton here as they continue to chase. The gap is now down to 50 seconds. As that breakaway, which went away very early on today as we went out around the countryside. Here's Tom Boonen. First time we've seen him for a while. Number 21, just in front of number 108 there, which is Luca Paolini, who's also a very good sprinter. If he gets down to it, he may have a problem with the last couple of times up the old Quaremont, though.
Well, we're inside now, 31 miles to go to the finish, and there are still 6 climbs left here in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, as they call it here, the Tour of Flanders. And the next climb on the agenda in about 3 miles' time will be the Kruisberg. It's a fairly easy climb. It's the climb that comes after that, Phil, that everyone else will start to fear. And at 36 kilometres to go, or 24 miles of racing left, the older Quadrimolder riders will ascend for the second time here this afternoon.
So the field here trying to organise a reaction to the group at 50 seconds. We've still no update on the condition of Fabian Cancellara, who crashed in the feeding station some 38 miles from the finishing line, except he has been taken to hospital with his injuries. The peloton is actually falling back here with no organised pursuit. 54 seconds now as we get on to the climb of the Kruisberg. And the Kruisberg is hill number 11, and Tyler Farrar there is the man in blue, sat in 3rd position. First time I've seen him actually grimace. He's looked very, very cool all day, Tyler Farrar.
Well, the American sprinter on the Garmin Barracuda team, Phil, has actually looked very comfortable on a lot of these climbs. It was suggested to him by the team management, look for the early breakaway here this morning. This is Thor Hushovd on the front now there in the jersey of BMC Racing, the black and red jersey, former world road racing champion. I think today he will be sacrificing his own chances for maybe Philippe Gilbert, the Belgian national champion, or why not Greg van Avermaet.
This looks like Hassan Basayev who's making a move here for Astana. And it looks as I thought he wanted to get away to have his lunch in peace, but he's put that in his back pocket now as he tries to open up a bit of a gap.
Well, this is a fairly long climb they're looking at here, but it's not a cobble climb like some of the other climbs that the riders will face up to here this afternoon. It's a long, smooth surface climb at 2.5 kilometres long, and that's just around about 1.5 miles. But look at the chaos which is the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Over on the left-hand side there, you can see the Lion of Flanders and the main field for the first time filling this very long straightaway, get a sight of what they've been chasing since the very early part of this race, the survivors of that early morning 15-man breakaway.
Well, we're now deep in the heart of Flanders here in Belgium. This is Rundt, and this is an area which is famous for its post-race circuit races after the Tour de France in the month of July. Basayev tried to be the first to bridge the gap. As Paul has said, that breakaway, once 15 strong, has been ahead virtually all day today. In the first hour, they covered 30 miles. In the second hour, it's 26 miles, so they've got an average speed of 28 miles for an hour for the first 2 hours of racing.
Well, this is
now, this is Boonen.
This is Boonen at the back of the group here. He's just getting a little bit of grease onto those that chain of his there. The mechanic wants to make everything right before we come to the final climbs of the day. He doesn't look like a man in difficulty. He's always been alongside one of his teammates, either Hed Stegemans or the other teammate who's an extremely strong bike rider, Stijn Vandenberg. They've been looking after him as we continue to see Basayev taking a slight advantage at the front end of the pack. He's about to get joined here by the French.
Gilbert is van boven. Hey, dat kan ik waar.
Probably the only climb, I would say, of the day, Phil, where you don't need to panic, but panic may well be the alarm bells ringing when you see the champion of Belgium coming to the front, the man who won the opening stage of the Tour de France last year, and that, of course, Philippe Gilbert in the black, yellow and red jersey. He may well hail from the French-speaking part of this country. He does speak Flemish, speaks extremely good English, and he may well be trying the act here today to unify this country, which for many, many years has been separated into two by politics and, of course, by language.
Well, this year, or last year rather, he finished 9th in this event, the Tour de France, having just finished 3rd in Milan-San Remo, but then started a fantastic year for him. In all, he ended the year with 23 victories, and it was an incredible performance by the man from Belgium. BMC quickly signed him up and took him And now he rides alongside Cadel Evans in the upcoming Tour de France. Remember that Cadel Evans for BMC is the defending champion in the Tour in July.
This is actually a dangerous little move because sneaking into this move, once again, Thomas Vogler there in the green jersey in second position. A real concerted effort was made there by the champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert, but also getting into this group because they've lost a man. In fact, Team Radio Shack have replaced a rider in the move here by Jaroslav Popovic. Now, this is the kind of race that would suit a man like Popovic.
And this is the point I was making, Paul, because Tom Boonen was caught at the back of this peloton doing his bit with the team car, and Gilbert has gone off the front and opened up a gap. And now it's a lot of work required for Boonen to get back into the action.
Yes, it is, but I think he's a man who knows exactly how he wants to ride his race. Look at the fact there's not one quick-step rider in this group at all. They're all in the group behind. They're looking after the interests of Tom Boonen. I noticed a quick-step rider coming to the front end of the main field to lift up the pacemaking and slowly pull it back to this group.
Well, there's a face of Philippe Gilbert, the champion of Belgium, knowing that maybe his form isn't as good as it was at this stage last year, but this is Belgium, and this is their biggest day out as far as any sport is concerned in this country. This is their one day of action, and they don't like it if a Belgian cyclist doesn't win this event. So, a chasing group trying to establish. We'll take another break. Rejoin us very shortly. Welcome back to the Tour de Flanders. We're live. There's 46 kilometres to go. That's about 26 miles left to the finish here. And the breakaway, literally, as you rejoin us, has been caught by the field. David Bouchier here, the Frenchman, is still trying to stay away. He's been in the original break of 15 riders, but there is the coming together of the field.
Well, the field now realise that the Tour of Flanders is getting underway. They've got 2 more ascents of the famous climb of the Old Quaremont. Many years gone past, I always said the race doesn't start till it gets to the Old Quaremont. Well, this year, Phil, they've probably got 3 starts because they're going over the Old Quaremont 3 times in this event here this afternoon. 2 more times to go. A little bit of respite here for the main field as the 2 groups join together. A little bit of a lull in the action before they then start to line themselves up, because there's only 6 miles separate the top of the Kruisberg, of course, from the Old Quaremont.
And that's where we're bound for now. The road becomes extremely narrow. It's a cobble climb. It twists and turns. And the last time we went round it, before we came on air, a lot of the peloton were forced to walk the climb.
By the way, the street they're coming into now is known as the Ronde van Vlaanderen, or the Tour of Flanders Street, named after this very famous road. It comes along this road in both ways here this afternoon. They're coming this way. They'll drop down into the small town of Kruisbergen along the bottom of this ridge, which this year the Tour of Flanders is zigzagging its way up and down this way and that to make this a very tough edition. I think probably one of the most nervous editions we've probably ever witnessed.
Johan van Summeren here to the right. He's now on his new team of Garmin Barracuda. He's taking on a late afternoon tea before the famous Quaremont comes his way. Incidentally, the Belgian riders have won this event 67 times out of a possible 95 rather. So they've dominated it in many, many ways. They don't like losing this race, and so be sure to see them under pressure as we get to the Quaremont this time around.
Well, Boucher, the rider in the front there from FDJ, the French team, is in fact from not too far away from here, because he was born in the small town of Fourmi, which is just over the border, not too far away from here. Another small group trying to prize an advantage over the front end of the peloton, but they're not being allowed any freedom at all, as Team Sky in the white jerseys with the blue strip right down the middle there pulls the race back together. They're obviously thinking about the possibility of a victory for one of their riders this afternoon, Edvald Bozenhagen or Juan Antonio Fletcher. But maybe the dark horse on their squad could be the man called Bernard Eisel, the Austrian rider.
Yes, Eisel is quite likely to spring a surprise, the Austrian. He's a very affable character, but this rider is trying to ride them all off. It's a hopeless task, I'm afraid. David Boucher, he's been in the breakaway of 15s almost since the flag was dropped, and he's the sole survivor now. The flag of Norway there waving for 2 riders, Boysenhagen and also for Thor Hushovd, both riders last year winning 2 stages each in the Tour de France. So Norway don't have many big cyclists, but these 2 are particularly good, and they're both in that field at the moment. Coming up on the outside now, the Dutch riders for Rabobank also moving their men forward. Lars Boom's been very, very active on that squad. Meanwhile, back in the field here, this is Kuzinski of Katusha. The field is regrouping. The battle is about to recommence. We'll take another break. Rejoin us. Oh.
That green edge. Sebastian Maguire.
Well, we're looking down there very, very briefly on an accident which has just happened to Sebastian Langeveld of the Australian Green Edge team. He's collided with a spectator. The breakaway remains the same, although not for much longer. This is David Bouchier out in front, and the peloton now massing right behind him. Now, if we can have a flashback here to what happened on that crash, you can see they're speeding down the street here. A couple of riders going down the pavement, and they catch a spectator marooned in the middle. He tries to get out of it, and his front wheel goes into the front leg, rather, goes into the wheel of Sebastian Langeveld, and Langeveld's wheel is ripped out, and he takes a very, very heavy fall indeed. These accidents, Paul, that they're so easy and so quick to mature, aren't they?
Well, all I can say as a piece of advice to any spectator is do not move, because 9 times out of 10 the bike rider will miss you. They're extremely good at bike handling, but if they've got a moving target in front of them, it's very difficult to decide what line they need to take. In the main field, though, Phil, they really are starting to whip up the pace. It is the final couple of kilometres as we get ourselves to the start of the Old Quaremont, and that's Frédéric Guédon sitting on the front end of the main field in that white jersey for FDJ. He's a very experienced rider. What he's trying to do, Phil, is get into the narrow streets to slow down the pacemaker at the front end of the peloton, hoping his teammate will get a couple more seconds advantage.
And Guédon here in the Tour of Flanders will retire from the sport, and next week in the Paris-Roubaix race, which we will also show you live. He's coming back from injury himself, but determined to retire in a race he once won, which will be next week in France. And there he is, looking over his shoulder here as Garmin Barracuda, the American boys, move up on the outside. That's their Australian team member, Heinrich Hausler, twitchy, looking around. And now we're getting down to the narrow roads. Remember, we are racing towards the second climb of the Old Quaremont climb. And that's the end of David Bouchier now. We're all together, 24.5 miles to go, and it's bye-bye from David Bouchier, who's been in the breakaway all day thus far, and he's caught 25 miles from the end.
Well, we talked, as I said earlier in the day, Phil, to Jonathan Vaughters. It seems as if his tactics are unfolding perfectly for the moment, because having had his man in the breakaway, Tyler Farrer, he was in the break of 15 men for a long time. His team didn't have to do any chasing as we now start the Old Quaremont for the second time. The third place rider in Team Garmin Barracuda there is Heinrich Hausler, and he's looking after the pre-race favourite from that American squad, and that, of course, is Sepp van Mark.
Picking up a nice tailwind on the cobbles of the Old Quaremont at the moment here. The spectator, there's no room on the road to stand at all, as you can see. And the riders haven't really got a smooth edge to these cobblestones. They've got to battle and bounce their way up to the summit. The art of riding these is fast as you can, and hope that you splinter the field.
Well, you might have said Tom Boonen was riding at the back end of the peloton, but when it's important, here he comes in third position there. He's moved himself up in that pale blue jersey. He knows where to be at the right time in a race like the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Right in front of him is a former winner of this race, Alessandro Ballan, also on the American squad at BMC Racing. He too knows the importance of riding at the right place at the right time in an event like the Tour of Flanders.
I'd be a little concerned about Ballan too. He's one of only 2 riders, the other being Fabien Cancellara, to have beaten the Belgians at their own game in this event in the last 10 years. And he's the, as Paul says, the former champion of Spain. He's second position at the moment. Boonen is in third position. Perfectly poised now. Boysenhagen is trying to move back up to the front as well. Now, if our camera holds this picture, you might see 1 or 2 riders at the back really in a spot of bother.
Well, it is a tough climb, this. It starts off with a smooth surface, then all of a sudden it kicks up. I just noticed George Hincapie going through there. I have to say, Tom Boonen in third position, Phil, is looking very comfortable. He really likes these cobble climbs. He knows how to ride them. You have to keep your hands nice and soft in the middle of the handlebars, allowing the bike to find its own way over the smoothest possible route that you can attain.
Well, the organisers have finally got the crowd into order here on the Old Quaremont now, and they've given us what road they can to the riders. There is Hincapie in the race, looking for his 17th finish. Tom Boonen, his head twitching in that light blue jersey to see who is making the moves, and in fact it's Sylvain Chavanel who's made the move, and he's gone forward. Tomica is the man, but Chavanel is the distraction. They're on the same team.
Well, that's the French national champion there, Phil, in the red, white and blue, and they've got this cordoned off like an arena here this afternoon, and these are the gladiators of the Tour of Flanders this afternoon. I think the nod went down there from Tom Boonen to his teammate Sylvain Chavanel. Put the hammer down, my man, because we're now inside of 24 miles to go to the finish of this bike race. and there are still 4 nasty climbs to go. Once they've summited here, the old Quaremont, for the penultimate time, Phil, they drop down and they go over the Paterberg, and that's the kind of climb that Tom Boonen really appreciates. Short, sharp and steep. Victory. That's when it was announced that he would be a co-leader to the squad here of Quick Step team, where you can see Tom Boonen riding there in 4th position. I think today, last year, there was a little bit of misunderstanding between them, but now I think with the fact that Tom Boonen has come back to the form that he had 2 or 3 years ago, Phil, the team will be all for one on the running towards the finish. But look at the damage that Chavanel has done.
Well, I tell you, look at the first 4 riders, Paul. They could all be the podium by the end of the race. Chavanel, Sagan, Alessandro Balin, and then Tom Boonen. 2 winners now in the front group of 4 riders.
Well, a little bit of youth and excitement there. He missed that bottle that he wanted to take on board.
So Chavanel continues as he now heads towards the Paterberg, which is a couple of kilometres on. It's very cool there, another danger zone. As we see, the breakaway has gone clear now on the second climb of the old Quaremont, but the peloton, a bit smaller, but are still in the thick of it. Now, remember, today's special live presentation of the Tour of Flanders is brought to you by Competitive Cyclist. Look at that gap.
Bang! That was Chavanel. go Paterberg. Oh! Oh dear. Van Sommeren. Oh, this is it. Boonen's winning. It's all over. Volpatte.
Other fallers there too, where riders such as Luca Paolini went down, and I think Luca might be in this league group at the moment. I may be wrong about that, Paul.
Well, it has caused a certain amount of chaos as we can now start to see the gaps opening seriously. 34 kilometres is all that's left here in this year's Tour of Flanders, and this is a very difficult climb as they go over the summit here of the Paterberg. A difficult climb, a steep climb. Just going round there, Dries Devenens, one of the teammates of the Omega Pharma Lotto duo, I'd have to say, because both Tom Boonen and Sylvain Chavanel have managed to get themselves back into the leading group of riders.
Well, there are 3 riders ahead of the peloton. They got away after we saw that wonderful effort by Sylvain Chavanel on the Eau Quaremont. And Juan Antonio Fletcher of Sky. Now look, we're going to see that crash again here as they swing onto the climb. It was Sommeren onto the right. He slipped on the side. One rider there from Katusha, I think, went right into the ditch.
Caught out in that gap on the right-hand side was one of the pre-race favourites as well, Peter Sagan from Team Liquigas Cannondale. Tom Boonen, very attentive, Phil, has ridden across the gap here with a teammate, and we're now down to a very select group of riders, just 10 riders strong, with about a 5 to 7 second advantage over the front end of the pack.
Riders scrambling across all of the time here. The breakaway was spearheaded by Juan Antonio Fletcher. Himself has been off the back with bicycle problems today. His team got him back on. The sprinter Luca Paolini from Katusha, and Vincent Jérôme, who is one of the young French hopes. They talk about him with glowing pride for the way he will develop into being a good bike rider. This is Paolini on the right of our picture now. The breakaway is growing.
But Sepp van Mark is in here from Garmin Barracuda. Tom Boonen is in here as well. He's got a teammate alongside him in the form of the French national champion Sylvain Chavanel. This could well be the deciding moment, but Van Boonen certainly believes it is. Phil, he's very happy to come to the front and whip up the pacemaking.
Well, this has been such a hard-fought race, really. Breaks have been going all of the time, and the one that's going to work surely has got to carry a favourite along with him. As we swing around here, trying to get on terms here now at the moment. The rider from Sky, it looks like it might be Ian Stannard, is it? I think it could be Ian Stannard. If it's not Stannard, it's Boysenhagen himself. I can't quite see it. I'm saying it's Boysenhagen. And the man we saw stop and was helped by his teammates, Oscar Gatto. He's a very fast sprinter if he can get across the gap to this lead group.
Well, these guys are organised. I have to say, you can see the French national champion now. This is a head-of-state breakaway coming off the front end of this pack, Phil. Second position, Alessandro Ballan, former winner, former champion of the world. But there are 3 riders in this leading group from Omega Pharma Quickstep, the new Blockhouse team on the block.
Yes, and as they continue to set the pace here, it's going to be tough now for anybody to bridge to this gap. We'll go out on our final circuit shortly. We have 3 more climbs to come. The next one in just a couple of kilometres, coming 32 kilometres as we are now, 20 miles to go.
The other rider in there, Phil, for Quickstep, in fact, is Nicky Terpstra.
So Oscar Gatto and Edouard Boysenhagen trying to cross the gap now at the moment. So the crunch moment has come in this year's Tour of Flanders. We'll take a break. We are now on the Hogeberg, the third climb from the finish, and we're about 19 miles to go. Those two riders of Gatto and Boysenhagen have not crossed the gap in the far distance, what is left of the peloton. But what we do have now are 11 riders, Paul, and in this breakaway, 3 of the 5 men we projected as favourites at the head of the programme are here. Sadly, Cancellara out with a crash, and Gilbert has missed the move.
Well, Gilbert may have missed the move, but he has a teammate in the breakaway. That's the rider just on the left-hand side. This is Boysenhagen. He's been pulled back into the main field. But all of the damage, I have to say, Phil, has been done by the team we've regarded this year as being a mega team. It was brought together by the formation of the Omega Pharma riders from the Lotto squad last year and the Quick Step riders, making this massive big team. They are strategically in the best position possible here this afternoon because they've got 3 riders in that leading group of 11. The 3 riders they've got is their pre-race favourite, Tom Boonen, the champion of France, Sylvain Chavanel, and the former champion of Holland, Nicky Terpstra. They're going to have to do something very special to beat these guys today.
And I must say, the team of Patrick Lefevre, this wily old Belgian, is vastly experienced. He's seen big teams come, big teams go. He's always steered a winning course with the team he's been in control of. And he has the firepower up here now with 3 riders on the Omega Quick Step team. If I have a little bit of a move here to try and get away, this will be Vincent Giron, who is the young upstart on the French squads, and they're holding big court for him for the future.
Well, Europe car and French cycling is in a bit of a renaissance in the last 24 months. They rode exceptionally well in the Tour de France last year, probably the best tour that they have actually performed in the last 5 years for the French, and they've got a lot of young blood on the way up. Yes, Thomas Voeckler is the man who wears the flag. He's the darling of France, but now under his wing he's managed to bring to the top of the sport a lot of young riders who are now not scared of the reputations of the tough Flandrians, like this young man here, Vincent Giraud. You can just see that flag flying there is no longer the Lion of Flanders. In fact, that is the flag of the Wallonie, and that will be flying very high here this afternoon for Philippe Gilbert. He's not made the split here this afternoon, but his teammate Alessandro Ballan from the American team BMC Racing is comfortably in this group of 11. Number 121 there, Phil. I have to take my hat off to him. The rider from Liquigas was slowed down by that crash at the bottom of the Paterberg, but he was still in the leading group once they went over the top of the climb.
Well, he managed to get the split. It was a difficult split. He wasn't in the initial move. The initial move came from Fletcher, Paolini and Jerome himself, and the others scrambled across the gap after they came over the top of the last climb, the Paterberg. Now, Jerome is causing consternation here, but what he is doing, Paul, he's keeping the momentum of this breakaway to pull clear of the field. I can't see who is left to bring these riders back to the fold.
It's an ideal situation. A lot of big names there. They all feel they've got their chance in a group like this. They will be, though, Phil, a little concerned about the fact that Omega Pharma Quickstep are very strong with 3 riders out of 11. This is not a bad situation for the breakaway either, because it's almost like the carrot ahead of the donkey. They will keep themselves encouraged to work together to make sure this Frenchman doesn't steal an advantage of 10 seconds, build it up to 20 and then 30 seconds, and then put them into danger and being in a situation of not being able to pull him back before the finish.
Luca Paolini just gone off our picture to the left. He looks over, sees big Tom Boonen come through. The crowd here in Belgium will be cheering all the way while their hot favourite Tom Boonen is there. Well, if they have gone, they've gone, but that race down there tells me they haven't let them go yet. 17 seconds, a long, thin line of riders here, puffing and blowing at the front as they try to bring it all back together. This is Bernie Eisel on the front.
Bernie Eisel now will not be riding for himself. The fact that the rider Bosenhagen didn't get across the gap, Phil, I think is why all of a sudden we've seen the pressure coming to the front, because Bosenhagen is the big leader this year for Team Sky Pro Cycling. A little bit of a strange tactic, though, because Juan Antonio Fletcher is in the group, but maybe he sent the message back to his teammates behind. My legs are not that great here this afternoon. I was only in this breakaway to look after the man whose nickname is the Bodog from Norway.
Well, 4 years ago, Fletcher did finish on the podium in this event when we finished in Meyerbecker, and he was third then. And this is good to see a French rider on the attack. The French do not feature well in this event over the years. But right now, Jerome is riding extremely strongly.
This is a little bit of a dangerous move, though, because although Nicky Terpstra has got an advantage, jumping straight across the gap is Sepp van Mark. Now, he is the man who, at the start of the day, was the Garmin Barracuda squad's tip for the top. And that's what Jonathan Waters told us this morning. They were all riding for this man. Tyler Farrar, the sprinter, had an opportunity to get into the early morning breakaway, but it was all about the man, the youngster, 23 years of age from Belgium, riding on an American squad who was going to ride for himself this afternoon. Just scrambling across the gap, you've got Luca Paolini in the red jersey on the Russian Katusha squad, but everybody else now picking up the pacemaking.
I'd be worried about Nicky Terpstra. He's bang on top of his form. Not very far away from where we're commentating here in Oudenaarde is the town of De Panne, which is on the Belgian coast, and last week Terpstra finished fourth in their small stage race there. So he's got good form, he's had a win as well. Probably having one of his best starts to a new season, but they're not having any of it here. Look at the work being done by Fletcher in the black as he drags the rest of the breakaway across. All of this infighting is going to pull them out a bigger lead over the chase.
Well, there's a group at 16 seconds, and the main field are 44 seconds behind, but they're stretched out into a very long line. This race, Phil, this afternoon is far from over.
16 seconds is the gap now. That group number 2, I think, is still Gatto, but Gatto himself now has gone back into the field. 16 seconds the spread to the whole of the contenders now. We will take another break at 15 miles to go. So that's a great coverage of Paris-Roubaix. It's live, of course, and all of these riders coming together again to do battle. Not very far away from where we are today. This is the biggest race in Belgium. Paris-Roubaix is the biggest one-day race in France. They are scrambling here, Paul. They're racing to keep the pressure on. Do you think this is the winning move?
I'm pretty certain this is the winning move of riders because you've got all the big names,
Sure?
but as I say that right behind, they're boring down upon them. They've still got about a 40-second advantage, and I really can't understand why this race is not riding away. Nicky Terpstra, the former champion of Holland, he's putting the pedal to the metal here this afternoon, trying to drag this group clear, and they're hoping that they're going to survive to the next climb, which will be the climb of the Old Quaremont for the last time, but that's still 4 miles to go.
And as we look here at Team Sky, and they've done the damage to close this down, to bring Boysenhagen back into the action. News coming from the camp of Fabian Cancellara from Trek Bikes is that he has broken his collarbone, and that's the only update we have had since we saw that crash, which came in the feeding station with about 38 miles to race. Poor Fabian today out of the Tour de Flanders. Nicky Terpstra here, former champion of Holland though, trying to drive away to a lone win. Remember, we are now racing for the third and final climb of the Old Quaremont.
Well, Nicky Terpstra may well be the surprise move here by Team Omega Pharma Quickstep. He ridden very well in the early part of this season. As you've mentioned, Phil, he was 4th overall in the 3 days of Le Panne, but he was also the winner of the race across Flanders, the Dwars door Vlaanderen. But Team Sky have got themselves organised. They're in a pretty impressive situation too, because they've got Juan Antonio Fletcher in the breakaway. That was Bernie Eisel doing the big turn. He's now allowing Christian Knies to do the pacemaking on the front, and they have done a great job of pulling that gap back from 45 seconds to inside of the half a minute margin now. The pressure is on Team Sky to do something next time we come to the Quaremont.
It is all down to Sky to repair the damage. They didn't have the man they wanted in the breakaway. They had Juan Antonio Fletcher up there. He must have said, let's bring this back together again. It's still Vincent who's tried to get away here, Vincent Durand, as he still joins up with Terpstra, but he keeps checking, he flick of his elbow there.
Boonen! Listen! Boonen is hier?
Luca Paolini at the front. The two riders are just about to be caught here. 20 kilometres or 12 miles to the finish, and I'm pretty sure the peloton is going to be all together any moment now. And as the riders hit the old Quaremont now for the last time, they caught those two leaders, and it is the former world champion, Alessandro Ballan of the American BMC team, who has gone clear alone.
Well, he's taken...
Ja.
Prima open. Dingen hozen, dat staat er ook nog niet. Vlaanderen! Kom op, Trka, Nicky! Kom op, Fred! Nicky, kom op!
On the false flat of the older Quaremont straight across that gap as if it was absolutely nothing indeed. In fact, we're now looking at a three-man breakaway as they get towards the top here. Tornado Tom Fritjes. Yes, I'm sure that tonight Tom Boonen will be having a big plate of Belgian fries if he can get himself the victory in a race like this. They're on the last few hectometers of the old Quaremont. A bit of a flat road, then down into the descent, and it's over the Paterbergville, which is the last climb of the day.
The active Olgers, the chasers, and they're being led here by Luca Paolini as he tries now to close down the gap. Slip away here and come together on the very last climb of the old Quaremont. I saw the face of Tom Boonen halfway up the climb. He was gritting his teeth and was not enjoying the climb at all, but he's found his strength somewhere to cross that gap to Ballan.
Well, that's what he was looking to do. He sat on the wheel. He's got the advantage tactically here because in this group behind, he's got 2 or 3 teammates, of course, still in there all of the time. Sylvain Chavanel, he will sit there. He'll be comfortable in his armchair ride with all of those other riders doing the pacemaking. If they catch this leading group... The French national champion.
This has been such a difficult race to lead. You've had to be strong throughout the day to marshal every move because each breakaway that's gone has looked likely to succeed. Now, 3 top names have moved clear, Pizzato, Boonen and Ballan. Ballan and Boonen have won this race 3 times between them. And remember, if Tom Boonen does win today, then he joins the all-time greats, one of only 5 men who will have won this race on 3 occasions.
Luca Paolini is the Italian rider on the Russian Katusha squad. He knows this is crunch time in the Tour of Flanders here this afternoon. He can almost see those 3 riders in front of them. That's why he's trying to ride across the gap. While you can see there, Sylvain Chavanel makes sure that one rider doesn't get halfway across the gap. But it looks to me, Phyllis, that the firepower is disappearing from that group behind. The legs now are starting to cry out for a little bit of a surrender, a little bit of respite as the Tour of Flanders gets harder and harder.
Well, I've never seen Luca Paolini ride so well for years, but he's now looking as though he's being left to go on alone here. As
en Boonen.
Milan is charging now. Pozzato Filippo is in second wheel here. He broke his collarbone in the Tour of Qatar, which was in the month of February. He's built on that since he's finished 6th in Milan-San Remo. The other week he was 9th in the semi-Belgian Classic between Ghent and Wevelgem. And now he's got into what might be the winning move here. As we're seeing, Paolini has had to go it alone. 10 miles to go to the finish, and this little Italian sprinter needs to get to the front to use it.
Well, that's what he's thinking of doing. He wants to get himself across the gap. This is a hard thing to do, to get halfway across a gap, because he's using a lot of firepower, a lot of energy, Phil, trying to get across this gap. Then all of it...
Hey, Philippe! Hey, Philippe! Om kapellen.
Prepared to help with the pacemaking.
We are not far from the actual climb of the Paterberg now, which is the springboard to the finish. As they continue, the last Italian rider to win this was indeed Alessandro Ballan back in 2007. Is he going to repeat it today?
Well, he's going to hope that he can. Pippo Pozzato has finished 5th place overall in this race before, and he's also a very astute tactician.
Hey, come on!
He tried to make the junction. Boonen realises, Phil, at a time like this, he's got to keep working. He's got to make sure that they conserve that advantage. When they go over the top of the final climb of the day, the Paterberg, there are just 7.5 miles of racing left to go to the finish. But it's not an easy 7.5 miles. And in fact, as many of the experts from Belgium said, it could be the wind at the end of the day that is the tactic that really is the undo. On the run in towards the finish.
Onto the slopes of the Paterberg for the last time now. This is Ballan keeping up the tempo he found on the old Quaremont. Tom Boonen following pretty coolly in second wheel. Pozzato, he might be the weakest of these three riders. This is the last climb of this year's Tour de Flanders, the 16th of a real aggressive day of bike racing. Can Paolini cross that gap on the cobbles?
Well, we've got a Belgian here in an Italian sandwich this afternoon, because on the front it's Alessandro Ballan. In third position, Pippo Pozzato. These are the riders now who are trying to steal the advantage. You can see just halfway across the gap is Paolini, but it's Peter Sagan who's doing the majority of the pacemaking in that group behind. Amazing to think, Phil, he's still in with a chance of a win at just 22 years of age.
Strong men will see this as their last chance now to cross from that chase to these three leaders. And these three leaders know that, believe me. And Boonen, like he was on the old Quaremont, is lacking a little bit here. He's finding the pressure just a bit too much as the race is being chased up by Pozzato at the front.
Well, he's under pressure, Boonen. He's controlling himself. He's trying to stay in contact. He's lost himself a bike length and a half, but he goes round the top here. He'll recover very quickly. He'll sprint, he'll accelerate, he'll dig deep into those reserves to make contact once again with those two Italians in front of him.
Well, a 5th place finish back in 2009 is the best finish for Filippo Pozzato, and he looked to be the best man on that climb. As they continue now to break up from the chase group, this is Sagan, his last moments to cross the gap and become a young winner of this event, and he will come from a country that has never won this race before.
Well, there's a lot of tension now in the run-in towards the finish because it undulates now. Tom Boonen will be happy to have survived the Paterberg, Phil, for the last time, but now what's he going to do? He's got to get his sprinting mind back in, but he's got to work with these two Italian riders with him, because the gap was only 18 seconds as they went over the top of the Paterberg, looking back here, sweeping to try and get an estimation of what the time gap is. There you can see halfway across the gap. I would expect that would be Peter Sagan trying to come back into this race.
Well, this is Sagan trying to cross the gap now. Desperate moments through the narrow roads of the wooded countryside here in Flanders as they race now for the finish. This is Ballan, followed by Tom Boonen and Pizzato. And if it goes down to the line with these three, it's not a foregone conclusion for the sprinter Tom Boonen, because Pizzato packs a punch in the sprint, as does this man if he gets across. So as we race through these very, very narrow streets here now, can the champion of Slovakia put himself back on stage here and make it 4 men for the finish? Well, we're just about 8.5 miles to go. We'll have to take one final break, but when we come back, we'll be there to the finish. And we're back, and it's every man for himself now in the Tour de Flanders. We're getting down to the last 6 miles to go. This is Peter Sagan, but he's being swept up here by a group, and that there's still those 3 riders out in front.
Well, the 3 riders in front certainly have set the race on fire here this afternoon. Big names as well. Pippo Pozzato is the man with lots of firepower. Former winner of this race, Alessandro Ballan. Former 2-time winner of this race, Tom Boonen. Halfway across the gap, Peter Sagan at 22 years of age was trying to close it all down, but the 3 leaders with just 6 miles to go hold on to an advantage of 25 seconds. No one is shirking any of the pacemaking in this leading group of 3, and they have to work this downfill all the way down to the line if they want to survive.
There are no more hills. That is the gap, which is getting itself reorganized again. The cream certainly has risen to the top, but with 9 kilometers or 5 and a bit miles to go, there's time for it to go sour. This is Peter Sagan. He refuses to give up. Paolini's gone into the back of the chase group. He was up the road, he's come back. We've still got Jerome here. We've got also Sylvain Chavanel. We have a great ride being done by the New Zealand rider Hayden Rolston as well. There he is, just dropping down in the black top to his jersey. He's done well to read this breakaway.
Well, Quick-Step and BMC Racing are in a very good position tactically, because that rider from BMC Racing, the American team, was Greg Van Avermaet, himself a very fast finisher. He will sit there and hope that they don't get caught and lead the chance for a victory to his own teammate, as we start to see now the acceleration. And this, in fact, is a Kiwi rider on Radio Shack Nissan Trek, Hayden Rolston, a former brilliant track rider. Doesn't look as if these riders are really putting the hammer down, but the clock is what's telling us the truth. It's almost half a minute. That corresponds to around about 500 yards advantage over the chasers.
8 kilometres or 5 miles left to go. The chief referee on the left of our picture there, now in the prime position to see what is happening behind. If those riders come close, he will move those cars so they don't leapfrog across to the leaders. Tom Boonen, he's only here now, I think, Paul, because he's Belgian. He's too proud, but I think he's absolutely shattered.
He has really been put under pressure by the attacks of these two Italians. First of all, by the attack of Alessandro Balin, then by the acceleration of the man in the lime green jersey on the right-hand side there, Pippo Pozzato. And yes, not only is he Belgian, Phil, but he's Flemish. And that's what this bike race is all about. It's about the Flanders, the Vlaanderen, and that's why they've all turned out today. Almost 750,000 people have lined the streets of the Flanders here this afternoon with one hope, one desire in mind, to see a Belgian winner. And the name they all uttered this morning was Tommeke, and that's his nickname for Boonen.
Well, the Belgians have won this race, as I said earlier, 67 times, and there was a period between 1924 and 1948 they were never beaten, 25 straight years. The Italians, in contrast, have won this race only 10 times, and now the odds are 2-1 against Boonen.
Well, that's theoretical, Phil, but I would say it's a 50-50 chance for Tom Boonen here this afternoon, because he is the man with the fastest finish. He's won on 7 occasions so far this year, and I'd have to say not only has his form and strength come back, but his mental has come back, his mental approach. And that could be sometimes the more powerful thing when it comes to the end of a bike race like this, especially when you've won it before in the past.
Well, we're seeing him today in Flanders live. Remember, we'll see him live again in Paris-Roubaix next week, and he's going to be in the mix again. That's also a race he has won in the past. But right now, Tom Boonen would give all his victories away to win this event for Belgium now. Massive crowds throughout. There's a huge crowd in the new finish in Oudenaarde, which is a long, straight finish. Peter Sagan here has tried his heart out today. Nobody has helped him, and it looks as though he's given up and he's fallen back into the chase.
Hats off, though, Phil, because he saw the move. He knew the move that he needed to be with. He could feel the power going out of this group that he was with and said, right, I've got to get across the gap. He took the one last chance that he could to try and get himself to this leading group of 3 riders. These are serious men. Pozzato in the lime green, in the black and red, Alessandro Balin riding like he hasn't ridden since 2009. And of course, I'd have to say probably a similar thing for Tom Boonen. He's been dogged by accidents and illness over the last couple of seasons, but this year he's back to being the man that he was a couple of seasons ago.
Now, 7 kilometres to go, just under 5 miles from the finish. The boys here are going to start thinking, how are they going to beat one another? That might cause them to slow a little bit. They can all sprint, and in theory now, for me, the best sprinter will be Pozzato.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one, Phil, just for a change, because in fact, for me, the best sprinter is Tom Boonen. He's a great sprinter. He's worn the green jersey in the Tour de France. He's won stages in the Grand Tours. He knows how to sprint, but it's always difficult. When you're in a 3-man group, it's not quite the same. There is always the chance that you make a mistake. You lead out a little bit too early. That gap is foreshortened by the camera there, because it's now, in fact, almost a 1-minute advantage. But these 3 leaders, they must continue to collaborate.
Well, Pozzato doing more than his fair share of work at the moment. 5th in this event in 2009, 6th the year before that. He's never been on the podium, though. And Balin and Boonen have both won this event. There is the official 5 kilometres to go, and we agree with that on our GPS right now. 56 seconds at 5 kilometres to go. In theory, that should be enough, but will it be?
Well, theoretically, they should survive. I think they will survive, because I think the guts have been taken out of the chase group behind. If we're talking about the success of professional bike riders here, well, Alessandro Balin, Phil, he's won 12 races throughout his career. Yes, some of them have been huge races. Pippo Pozzato in the lime green there, he's won 46 races. Tom Boonen, number 21, he's the most prolific winner in this leading group with 116 victories to his career since he turned professional back in 2002.
And that's the man who's grimacing, just passing in and out to the right of our picture now, knowing he's got all the pressure of the day. But let's face it, all week he's had the pressure of the day because the newspapers have been flashing headlines every day about Tommeke. Tommeke's the affectionate way of speaking in the Flemish language when you're talking about the boy. And Tommeke today is on everybody's lips. 5 kilometres to go for the chase, and all of a sudden the energy has gone from that group.
3 miles of racing is what remains here. Tommeke Boonen, he's got his teammate, team manager up alongside him, Wilfred Peters. Peters himself, a seasoned professional rider in the one-day classics, giving him some advice, some last-minute encouragement, just reminding him the pressure of the whole of this nation is on his shoulders here this afternoon. There's probably around about 70% of the television figures in Belgium this afternoon are watching these images of the Ronde van Vlaanderen.
The makeshift grandstands, they've had a great day out watching the race. Now they're still cheering a Belgian hope here in Tom Boonen. He wears the flashes on the ends of his racing jersey sleeves there of a former world champion, which he is, of course. And so too is Alessandro Balin, who's setting the pace now. These are 3 of the biggest names in the world of cycling on the biggest one-day race in Belgium. I'm not surprised that Pozzato's team car here is getting pretty excited. It's a new team, really. He joined it this year, Farnese Vini. That means...
daar is het. Allez Pippo, come on!
Pozzato.
Balin niet meer wint.
He was going for his 4th win. He was beaten by Gianni Bugno.
Yes, and how annoyed. He would have been the first man ever to win this race 4 times. We still have 3 riders sit on 3 victories. If Boonen wins, there'll be 5.
Chavanel, Sagan. December.
On 3 victories, sorry, 4 riders already there. Attack now by Balin. He's probably the weakest of the 3 when it comes to the sprint, so he's turning the screw at 3 kilometres to go, but they're on him.
Well, that is a sign of not having too much confidence, knowing that if he's going to win, he has to win alone. Puts more pressure on Boonen to nail back the gap, but Boonen has got 2 Italians up against him, although he may well have the advantage that Pippo Pozzato in the...
Eerste speldenbreek betekent Alessandro Balin.
Als Balin wil gaan, dan moet hij verder afstand nemen, dan moet hij iets verder van achteruit kunnen komen, want dit is een telefoneerde demarrage, dat was ook niet demareren, dat was gewoon eens testen, laten ze me rijden, dan oké, laten ze me niet rijden.
Hij werkt zacht.
Swing of his hand there says, come on guys, we still got to keep working. If we mess around too far from the finish, we'll find ourselves getting caught on the running towards the line.
Pozzato now waving his arm. He doesn't want to be in the front, and I can't blame him.
Popovic.
That's about 1¼ miles to go. He's a two-time winner of stages of the Tour de France. He won in Saint-Brieuc and in Autun. His last win coming in 07. He's won both of those stages with his sprint. And there's the attack, almost telepathy there, because Alessandro advertised it and he's gone, heading for the 2 kilometre to go banner.
Well, as they say in professional cycling, Phil, that is telephoning in. Or attack there because he attacked from the front, but no, Boonen was nervous. Boonen was ready. I think he's more concerned about the rider in third position though, because Pipo Pozzato, he is a prolific winner, 46 wins to his credit throughout his career, but the man trying to take advantage of the marking of the two riders in second, third position is Balán. But Balán, I believe, Phil, has to get away alone if he wants to win. Pozzato is in the ideal position, but they can't mess about like this. They've got to make sure they keep riding up to the final kilometre and then settle it like men.
Well, Balán has quite clearly told us he can't win the sprint, and he's trying desperately to get away. He's going to try and get away again before the finish. Maybe he'll be forced to go at 1,000 metres, just over half a mile from the line. He looks across at Tom Boonen. Boonen will wait for Pozzato to make the first move, I would think, and try and take him on the line. Now they're allowing Balán into third wheel, the place where you can't keep an eye on him. He's sure to try again.
But look at Boonen, his head is twisted half to the right-hand side. He's waiting to hear if there's the whistle of the acceleration coming. They're looking now at the banners across the road. Boonen is nervous as you can be, switching into the slipstream there of Pozzato, waiting to hear if there's any acceleration going to come at the last minute. If there is, he will...
Dan ben je nu al een mannetje voor de eeuwigheid. Dat is goed voor Boonen.
Balán coming by him, he will try and anticipate the move.
This is such a huge race. All three want to put it, and there's the attack. It had to come, and Boonen was looking at Pozzato, little late on the kick, but he's gone 1,000 metres out from the line. He can't win from that distance, surely, and he's going to shut down again.
Much too far. This was his last chance, but you see how nervous Boonen is. Now he's got his hand. It's almost like a track sprinter. He keeps twisting his head round, trying to feel what's going to happen with Pozzato. Pozzato is going to wait till the last possible moment. 2 Italians versus 1 Belgian, 1 Flandrian, an echte Flandrian. That's what Tom Boonen wants to be this afternoon, a real Flemish bike rider. But he's nervous, he's twitchy, and when you're nervous, you can make mistakes.
Well, they've all been to this finishing line to recce it in the week because they'd never seen this finish before. This is a brand new finish in this event. I think the event has been very exciting because of the new course. It's projected 3 great names as likely winners here. And now they're losing time all of the time. Balán is exactly where he doesn't want to be at 500 metres, a non-sprinter on the front. I'm afraid cannot win this race. Pozzato knows now he's got to stay cool. He's got to get the drop on Tom Boonen.
Come on, Boonen, come on, Boonen!
First position, he'll start to wind it up. That might be an advantage now for Tom Boonen, but locked onto Boonen's wheel is Pozzato. The sprint now is starting to wind up. Boonen in second. Watch out for Pozzato.
So Balán has started it, and Tom Boonen's seen the finish. He's being drawn like a magnet to the line. It doesn't look like he's... Pozzato, or has he? Pozzato is coming, but on the line. Tom Boonen gets it. He becomes the winner. stages in the years gone by. Now there is a typical Belgian crowd enjoying the moment here. Their man has won, and as Belgium, as you probably know, is a great country for beer, there'll be a few gallons of it drunk tonight. Berlin as they race for fourth place. Now we're not in control of the pictures, so our cameras are going elsewhere, and I'm not surprised Tom shakes his head. What a magical couple of weeks he has had in the Belgian Classics as we now commence the sprint for fourth.
Well, coming up to the line over on the right-hand side there, there is Luca Paolini, who was a great sprinter many years ago, and he's going to hang on here for fourth place. On the line there, it looks though as if it was Greg van Avermaet, Phil, winds it up as well for Team BMC, and I think he got fourth place just on the line there, ahead of Paolini.
That's a very good result for Greg van Avermaet, and a great day out too for the American team BMC, but they have to settle for third and fourth, and not what they would have preferred, probably first and fourth. As Tom Boonen now being chased down the straight here. Boonen salutes his public. It has been an incredible race for him, and it just gets better and better. The resurgence of Tomica is what they will call it here. Second in Het Nieuwsblad at the start of the season, a local Belgian classic. Then he had a record fifth win in the Grand Prix E3, which is named after the local freeway here, which takes you across Europe. And then just the other day he won the other classic, Gent-Wevelgem. And now, Paul, he sits here mobbed as a three-time winner of the Ronde van Vlaanderen. And there's Patrick Lefevre.
Patrick Lefevre has been a team manager, Phil, back since 1983. I have to say, he has managed to change with the times. We've got a brand new team here this afternoon.
So, well, it's all come good for Belgium. A new course, a controversial one, but it's come good with a Belgian winner. It is the 68th victory in 96 attempts by Belgian cyclists to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen. And now, Tom Boonen joins Arkiel Buys, Eric Le Mans, Fiorino Magni and Johan Museo as the only men to have won this event 3 times.
Well, it's all joy in the Belgian camp here this afternoon. And obviously Boonen, he must have been very nervous right down towards the end. It looked as if those legs were buckling underneath him, but that is his style. Pieter Pozzata came up alongside him, but in the end he didn't have that final kick to come over the top of the big Belgian.
It has been a very, very difficult race to actually read today, and the strongest men came out in the end. A huge result for Tom Boonen, and I make that his 117th win of a career which began in 2000.
Achille Buijsen, Fiorenzo Magni, Johan Museo, Eric Le Mans tussendoor, en nu Tom Boonen. Now Tom Boonen.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wasn't expecting it. I was even not feeling super today. I don't know why, but I was feeling a little bit tired on the race. And but as the race went on, I kept the same feeling. I think the others went tired. But then in the final, I had to count on my sprint. I was not strong enough to ride it to the finish solo. But then with the 3 guys, this final, I think it was an amazing race with an amazing finish.
Congratulations to Tom Boonen. For Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye from Belgium. See you next.